Clarence Thomas turned on Trump. No, of course he didn't. How do you know? Because that's what the Daily Kos reported. Any liberal rag that's reporting on Clarence Thomas will always be a outright lie, completely made up. I'll prove it to you. Welcome to Doug in Exile. This is where the happy patriots are. If you have not checked in below and left us a message in the chat, then you're doing it wrong. Thumbs up. Love it that you're here. It wouldn't be Doug in Exile unless we were checking in on the Supreme Court, which we regularly do, because I think it's neat to give a lot of attention to the presidency, a lot of attention to the Congress. But what about our other branch of government, the Supreme Court? Super important. Again, I'm going to show you my whole technique on how I do this. Look, this is really easy, right? Look, it's a Google search. All I did was I typed in the Supreme Court and then I put in news. And so these are the top headlines. And then you can learn so much from the headlines, like who are the liars? And I mean huge liars. So here's Politico, which is already just a famous liar about the Hunter Biden laptop and the 51 intelligence agents. When their journalists came and called them out about Hunter Biden's laptop, when the journalist said that it was true, Politico came back and said, and just buried the story. So this is a lying rag already. And their headline is, Ketanji Brown Jackson sharply condemns Trump's attacks on judges. And I'm not going to read all of these articles, guys, but I'm going to show you the gist of how bad the reporting is, even especially from Politico. Ketanji Brown Jackson sharply condemns Trump's attacks on judges. There she is. That's a Biden appointment. He said he was basically didn't care about merit. You know, he wanted the most qualified, a black female judge. There you go. So you got your black female judge. Think of all the qualified white female judges or Asian female judges he could have picked. I'm going to narrow it down to just the black female. What about the male judges? Here's Rio Grande, Puerto Rico. In another country, I guess, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson forcefully condemned attacks by President Donald Trump and his allies on judges who have blocked Trump administration policies, warning Thursday that the increasingly hostile rhetoric poses a dire threat to the country's political fabric. You know, Ketanji Brown Jackson, if she hasn't already called out Black Lives Matter, and she hasn't, if she hasn't called out liberal rhetoric, burning Teslas to the ground, she doesn't care. So it's politics to say that Trump's rhetoric is going to tear apart the country's fabric. Quote, here's a quote from her, "The attacks are not random. They seem designed to intimidate those of us who serve in the critical capacity." Now here's Ketanji Brown Jackson. She's not just a judge. Now she's a mind reader. They seem designed to intimidate. No, they're not. I think Supreme Court judges should utterly ignore what anyone says. The Supreme Court actually already has a right to ignore the president of the United States. It's a separate, co-equal branch of government. Jackson told a judges conference in Puerto Rico, so she's slamming the president in another country. Thank you, traitor. Quote, "The threats and harassment." Ketanji Brown Jackson, did someone shoot at your head? Oh, that was Trump. Tell me about threats and harassment. Your celebrity status on the left. Threats and harassment are attacks on our democracy, on our system of government, and they ultimately risk undermining our Constitution and the rule of law. Now, I'll agree with her that real threats and real harassment are an attack on our democracy. I'm going to ask my audience here, who has made more threats and harassed more? The left or the right? Democrats or Republican? MAGA or the woke? Because I'll agree that who does more threats and harassment? It's the left by far. It's not even close. Actual harassment, actual threats. You know how many death threats Elon Musk gets? So I'm not going to continue with this article, but you get the gist of it, right? Let's go back to these headlines here, because that was just our first headline. I'm already on a roll. By the way, please subscribe. There's my stats are showing that some of you are watching without subscribing. We want you in the channel. Help get us up to 1 million subscribers. It pushes this content out. So thank you for that. More headlines. Remember, with the Supreme Court in our search term up here, Supreme Court justice gets standing ovation for breaking cover to attack Trump. The outburst came after months of near silence on Trump's judges. This is about that Ketanji Brown Jackson thing. This is over at Daily Beast. This is a British rag, so I don't care what your opinion is about Ketanji Brown Jackson's unprofessional, unprecedented outburst in Puerto Rico attacking another branch of government. She's saying Trump, was too mean and attacky of the Supreme Court, which he wasn't. He simply criticized them. Big deal. That's always kind of my big comment. You probably go like, Doug, why is everything, you seem so apathetic. Why is everything so not a big deal to you? I'll tell you why. It's the left and the Democrats who are out of power right now. They lost an election. So they're the ones telling you everything is, the sky is falling. It is the apocalypse. This is a constitutional crisis. They're the ones that go nuts. So how do I counter it? I don't go back and go nuts on them. I tell you guys, it's time to take a nap, time to have a giant collective yawn because they're just throwing a tantrum. Because all they're really showing is they're out of power. They lost an election. They're nowhere near coming back to power again. That's my conclusion of this whole thing. Here's Maryland. Parents await the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on religious liberty. This is about your government trying to stop the ability to have religious charter schools. Why North Carolina Elections Board GOP majority could affect state Supreme Court race. Again, this is one court race. I'm happy that it's good news leaning our way in North Carolina. The Hill, Trump administration asked Supreme Court to end protected status for 600,000 Venezuelans. This one, all they're trying to do is to remove protected status from Venezuelans so they can deport them. Trump administration asked the Supreme Court on Thursday to end deportation protections for more than 600,000 Venezuelans, the administration's latest plea for the justices to intervene in President Trump's sweeping immigration agenda. The emergency application seeks to lift a San Francisco-based federal district judge's ruling that halted the administration's plans as a legal challenge proceeds. With that decision, finding the abrupt policy change, it smacks of racism, they said. So they're trying to keep them from deporting Venezuelans. This is San Francisco, literally the most liberal place in the entire United States. And their judges believe that your vote for Trump means nothing. This is a state judge that believes your vote, and Trump getting an overwhelming majority, that the judge is actually the president and has more power. Now we have a separation of powers. I don't know how far a judge can go with this. This is about what headlines go up on Google. So this is part of the strategy of marketing the left. The Google favors the left. So all of media favors the left. So this is where all the bad news is coming from. Live updates: the Supreme Court appears open to approving religious charter schools. That's a scare article from the New York Times. That's actually good news to have religious charter schools. This one's from Politico. The Supreme Court could unleash chaos on the economy. Two big Trump court battles are about to collide now. Anytime they show you a picture of Trump and Stephen Miller, the article is trying to scare you because they hate Stephen Miller. Okay. In less than 2 weeks, two extraordinary elements of the Donald Trump legal saga will collide. The battle to bring down Trump's tariffs. That's what the left is trying to do, is to tear his tariffs down. And that includes Rand Paul saying that Trump cannot put up a tax. It's not true, but I'm just saying they're going to try and push up to the Supreme Court. And the Trump administration, and it's the Democrats that are trying to do it, and the Trump administration's fight to prevent judges from blocking his policies across country. That is, the lower judges are trying to keep Trump from deporting illegals because they want their emergency permanent illegal citizens to be voting in our elections. So they're going to try and run that one up the Supreme Court. I believe both of those are going to fail. Trump's going to get to keep his tariffs. The lower judges are not going to win over Trump if it does go to the Supreme Court. Now, I got the biggest lie and the funniest, worst article ever written. Should be no surprise to you guys. This is over at Daily Kos, giant left-wing, liberal, Marxist rag Daily Kos. Atheistic, might as well be just written by the most hostile, crazy lefty loopy of the Democrat Party. Here's the headline: Donald doesn't like Barrett anymore. Maybe Thomas too. I'm actually not going to weigh in on the Barrett thing because a lot of people on the right don't like Barrett. I'm just going to show you where they got the quote from on Thomas. Let's go down and look this last paragraph here. Why Alito and not Thomas? Alito has had some financial scandals, but Thomas is the greatest offender in taking bribes. That's what Daily Cost claims is why Trump is turning on Clarence Thomas, is because he's the greatest offender in taking bribes. There's no evidence for any of that. There's accusations, of course, but there can't be any other word for the gifts that he has taken. So they admit that they made up the word. That's opinion, that it's a bribe. Then in the very next sentence, they say the gifts that he has taken. It's a gift. Is it because he is the most soiled of the justices? Is Clarence Thomas? Is that why Trump is turning his back on him, even though he's not turning his back on him? And come to find out, he's not the most soiled justice at all. Now, here's my favorite line. We're going to end on this. I could be reading too much into it in the case of Thomas, but leaving out Amy Comey Barrett is pretty obvious. So they just came off the whole headline right there. I could be reading too much into it in the case of Thomas. Yes, correct, little infant. You're a journalist. I could be reading too much into it. Yeah, you're reading too much into it. Exactly. Go with that headline. Anyone who says Trump is turning his back on Thomas is reading too much into it. That's a true headline. Now you're all caught up. I will keep covering the Supreme Court. If you guys keep liking and subscribing to this channel, I'm Doug in Exile. Now you're all caught up.